I think most of you know me, but my name is Stefan, and I work with Common Action Preschool and a little bit with the NCJ, and I've dabbled in Vision 2020, and so I'm representing kind of all of these things, I guess. But thanks for coming. You obviously know what you're here for. Corey wrote my thing here. He's my speechwriter, so I'm going to do my best. Anne McGowan is going to speak, obviously, and she is a wealth of knowledge on this, so we're really glad to have you. Thank you for coming. You spoke to the community a few months ago about the Keystone pipeline in Central Illinois, correct? Oh, Corey said that. Speechwriter.
Got the word out about it.
Oh, okay. The Enbridge pipeline system that, if constructed, could potentially do devastating things in our community, pumping tar sands through Central Illinois, right near us. And Ann has been involved with this issue since back in 2008, but has been involved with issues surrounding this since forever. And we wanted to put this together so that we could start a dialogue about this, with the hopes that the dialogue will lead to things that we can decide to do together to challenge what is happening. So this will be somewhat informal, and we'll begin with a presentation on Enbridge, and after that we'll discuss what possibly we can do as a group and with other groups in town, including IPA. We have some IPA people here, and IPA has some things in the works, correct? Or possibly...
Yes.
So, okay. And so we just want to see what is happening and see what we can all do. And there's a sheet that Corey has. He's going to pass around for something.
Yeah, I'll pass it out, or pass it around during the discussion. It's just a sign-up sheet, a way for us to keep in contact with people who are interested in the issue and perhaps even want to commit to organizing around it in the future.
Excellent. There's also propaganda back there on the table and email list. And
don't take the propaganda away because some of that are singles. They're just for looking.
Correct. Some of the environmental propaganda is just for looking. The free school propaganda is for taking.
Excellent.
And you can also donate if you'd like. The free school has very little expenses, but we do have some. So that's it. So sorry.
Thank you. That's a bright light. This is a long story, and I'm going to make it as short as I possibly can. I'm going to take us back to the 1970s when Jimmy Carter was president, and he put solar panels on the White House, and he called together all the engineers he could find who were interested in solar and wind technology and getting the country onto a green energy grid. And these folks came together, they put their heads together, and they came up with a plan, which, if it had been followed, would have had us in totally green energy by 2000. But then Ronald Reagan was elected, the solar panels came off the White House, the energy companies came into power, and they are still in power. And we are finding that they are doing a lot of devastating damage to the land, to the soil, to the water and the air. We could be converting our energies to clean, but we're still talking about oil. We've got to have oil. There are some hopeful things about this, but there are some scary things too. I first became aware of the threat to our local area back in 2007, and I wrote a letter to Senator Durbin at that time. Background music.
Yeah.
A leak.
And I asked him how on earth we could be having a Canadian company pumping tar sands oil through McLean County, Illinois.
Hi, Deborah.
Sorry, we're running late.
We have a guest on here.
Yeah, let me just introduce our guest from Chicago.
You guys haven't started yet?
We have started yet. We have started already. Anne's right in the middle of her talk. Can you see her?
No. Oh, okay, yes, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so She just started back at the 1970s, with the Carter administration, has gotten up to the present almost already, right?
No, July 2000, I can take it from there, Jan, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I wrote a letter to Senator Durbin when I learned that Enbridge Company was going to pump tar sands in a pipeline through eastern McLean County. And I asked how this could happen, that a Canadian firm could invade American territory and pump tar sands through. And it turns out that NAFTA allows this sort of thing, but it's up to the states to regulate what comes through. Fortunately, we have an Illinois Commerce Commission which was on top of that situation, and they did later on, as I'll tell you, permit the project, but not allowing the company to have eminent domain. So there are several articles on your seats to bring you up to date with the tar sands issue versus the fracking issue. They are both related in that they are oil companies trying to get the last drop of energy of fossil fuel out instead of turning their attention to green energy. Okay, I wrote to Senator Durbin, he wrote back, as he always does. I wrote to our decision makers in 2008. Isn't it ironic that our area, which has already committed precious agricultural land to the generation of clean power via wind farms, should be threatened by a proposed Enbridge pipeline carrying filthy junk under high pressure beneath our soil and across our waterways, et cetera, et cetera. And that was to the Pantograph and to our decision makers. This proposed pipeline is a health hazard we must avoid. Stop the pipeline. In fall 2008, I approached them. I was at that time the director of the ecology, or retired director of the Ecology Action Center. So I knew all these environmental groups in town. And I approached the many environmentally minded groups about these concerns and developed a petition for them to support as organizations or sign as individuals, and many did. So the petition read, "We the following request that when the Enbridge tar sands pipeline is laid through McLean County, whether by Enbridge itself or a contracting firm, that the crossings of the Mackinac River and Money Creek be designated and treated as high consequence areas." That means more concrete, deeper dug, and more policing, checking up on it afterward to make sure there isn't a spill. We understand that high consequence areas are held to the highest construction standards and the highest level of spill and leak monitoring and response. When they cross the stream, these pipelines go under the stream. But of course, when something spills, it goes up. So you really want to be on top of that. We had many reasons for it, and a lot of groups did sign it. And we had petitions out in the stores. We have Sugar Grove Nature Center, John Wesley Audubon Society, Mackinac River Ecosystem Partnership, Friends of Kickapoo Creek, Ecology Action Center, and there were others, and I don't keep very good records, so I don't have them all. In February 2009, I applied for permission to address the McLean County Board about the Enbridge spill concerns, and I did so. They gave me 3 minutes. You apply, you can talk for 3 minutes. And the board members were interested. They were also incredulous that any company would allow spills. And they said, but the company doesn't want spills. And I said, no, of course they don't want spills. They're losing product. They're annoying people. They're causing damage. They don't want them, but spills happen. And the McLean County Board then did ask their administrators to follow through in a conversation with Enbridge that resulted in a fairly long correspondence. And in May 2009, we received a letter, both the county board and our group received a letter from Enbridge promising to treat the designated water as high consequence areas, even though Money Creek did not technically apply. And that was corroborated by a letter from the Pipeline Hazardous Materials and Safety Administration, which is the regulatory agency of the United States government. There was also, at the same time, excuse me, a class action suit going on by landowners. Tom Pleur was leading this against the crossing of their property. They did not want pipeline crossing their property. And those people are still holding it up slightly in court. I'm not up to date on that in the last month, but that was still the case a month ago. In 2009, the Illinois Commerce Commission approved the Enbridge project to build a pipeline, but denied permission for the company to use eminent domain to deal with reluctant landowners. So Enbridge must go through the process of reapplying for eminent domain right in order to cross land where the landowner does not want it. And that can be a lengthy process, so we don't know what's going to happen with that. In 2010, in July and August, Enbridge oil spills in Marshall Township, Michigan, spilled into the Kalamazoo River, and it took months of cleanup, and homeowners had to be bought out by the company because they lost everything and their homes were not salvageable. So it was very expensive for the company to do that, but it was also a sock for them in the public relations department, because the Pantagraph, and the articles are back there, ran article after article, and that's just the Pantagraph. Every paper in the Midwest had articles about these spills, and they went on and on. And then in the fall of that 2010, in Romeoville, Illinois, there was another spill. So this project got paused. And the Flanagan to Patoka project, which comes south, it's the Southern Access Extension, south through McLean County, was just put on hold. So I called the company and I said, why have the pipes been removed? They were stored on Wiley Drive. The whole project was visible right there. And the pipes disappeared, so I called the company representative. Well, the reasons given for the holdup were reduced oil use by Americans because of the lowered economy. Don't you love it? We're not as addicted as we thought we were. We actually reduced our oil use, so they didn't have as much of a market for the oil. And also there was still the lawsuit pending. So, nothing more from Enbridge for a long time. 3 years. Okay, 2013. Informational meeting held by Enbridge for McLean County residents, February 28th, 2013, at the Chateau Conference Center. And there were other residents. Now, this would be a good time to show that map, Rachel, of the pipeline projects. Okay, here's the part that we're talking about. Flanagan is really Pontiac under disguise. And this is the part that's going to come down through McLean County. This is the part that the Peoria people will be interested in because it goes through Peoria.
There's another one.
That's
Yeah.
Flanagan South.
Okay, we'll save that for later. Let's get back to where our particular area is. So they showed us these property maps, and when we get to finish talking, you can go over and look at these. You can see where the pipeline is going to go right through whose property. And at this informational meeting, the most crowded table was these maps, and then there was somebody who looked up and told you whose property that was. So we went from station to station at the meeting, met the company experts in various phases of the project. So you talk to the safety guy here, and you talk with the environmental person here, and the public relations person here. If you wanted to invest in it, you could talk with somebody else. And a company rep would tell you whatever you wanted to know about that. I went prepared with my 2009 letters of promises that had been made about the HCA crossings. And all the Enbridge personnel that I had dealt with previously were no longer in their jobs. There was somebody else, which I imagine happens a lot with big companies. So the public relations representative introduced me to the environmental lead of the Southern Access Extension. Her name is Catherine Hansen. She had not known about these agreements. So I got her to look them up, and she promised to do that, and she emailed me back. She got a copy of the letters from the company and forwarded them to the project engineer so that they are aware of the commitments made in the previous correspondence. So we need to watch this project unfold very carefully. That's our job as citizens, because we're not sure that they're going to hold up to their promises. We're not sure that promises that were made in 2009, 2008 are going to be kept. Also, we don't know that the promises our governments made to them need to be kept. So this is something that we citizens need to get involved with.
And
Yes?
I'm just looking at that map, and if you look at the top end of it, up by Montreal, and then follow that up to New Brunswick, that's right where that train that was full of tar sand exploded. I mean,
That's right.
so,
Up there.
right, so do you know if that's connected at all to Enbridge?
Enbridge is not the only company doing this.
Right.
If we look at a map of the entire country, it is completely networked with
Wow.
these pipelines.
Wow.
Now, whether it's safer to ship the stuff by train or by pipeline, people can argue about that. I say it belongs in the ground, under the trees where the birds nest.
Where nature put it.
Right, because we can get these energies cleanly. We do not need fossil fuels anymore. These are the petitions that we sent around, and I'm going to let you pass them around. If you want one, take it. On the back is a mistake. Ignore. I was trying to get a better map of this area, but the printer mistook my intentions and printed the wrong side of the Enbridge flyer, so I'm glad that Rachel's got a better map than this, a closer map than this for you to see. And here are the promises on the pink paper. So let's pass those around so that we each have a copy of what those promises are. And if I should disappear off the face of the earth, the rest of you can hold the company to your promises. Now, the bigger picture is what I'm concerned about. We've been talking about fracking. We fought valiantly against fracking in Illinois and lost. The problem is the same. It's oil companies trying to get the last dollar out of the ground without regard to the health of their own children. It's not just my grandchildren and your grandchildren. It's their own grandchildren. It's short-sighted and it's unhealthy. So I want us all to get out there and stop this and get us on green energy. Now it's your turn to talk for a while.
Can I just throw something out real quick? I'm going to pass around a sign-up sheet, just so for those who would like to keep in contact with what will happen in the future, you can write down your name, email, telephone number. And then there's two different columns of how you would, just if you want more information or if you want to be more directly involved in the campaign. I also like to do a plug for Illinois People's Action, who did the organizing around fracking, or opposing fracking in this last year, and is very likely to be a part of opposing pipelines here in central Illinois. And if you want to put there on the sign-up sheet, interested in membership in IPA, or you can talk with me, and $35 per year. I think it's well worth to support IPA in organizing again for the environment.
You said that the reason they got away with a lot of this stuff was NAFTA. My understanding of NAFTA is that that is not actually a treaty under the U.S. Constitution. A treaty requires a 2/3 vote of the Senate. It's only a simple majority vote like a resolution. So that should not be legally binding over state law and federal law of our country. That's not a treaty under the U.S. Constitution. Has anybody taken that on as a legal thing to say?
I wouldn't know how to do that, Ralph. Is there a lawyer in the room? A constitutional lawyer in the room? I know, I was told by Durbin that Illinois has a right to regulate whether they came through or not, and Illinois, through the Illinois Commerce Commission, granted them that right. Yep.
Do the counties have a right to say you can't come, you can go to Illinois, but you can't come through my county?
That has been a really tricky issue, both with the fracking issue and the pipeline. McLean County has a stronger county ordinance than many Illinois counties do. However, it can be overridden at the state level, and we've not, did the fracking bill override the county?
Yes.
It did.
Yeah, well, at least until there is a lawsuit, that is how it is being interpreted by most people. There will probably be a lawsuit by some, because some counties are opposing it. But how the oil and gas industry negotiated it was that they would only give up local control to municipalities, you know, not just home rule, but other municipalities, but that if counties had control, it was a deal breaker. So, but the language is a little fuzzy, so there may still be some lawsuits.
So
yet.
the court will have to decide.
The court will have to
Probably
decide.
case by case, you know.
You said the pipes disappeared out,
Yeah, they had been stockpiled
Are
at
they
Wyman
back?
Drive. No,
they're still gone.
where they are,
Where
as
are
of email yesterday, is in El Paso. Let's do the Flanagan extension again.
Go to the next one, Rich.
Where did it go?
It's
Here's,
El Paso.
here we go, El Paso. Elvira emailed us saying that her friend has been working on this in another state, and he's been sent back here by Enbridge to start work, and it will be on this section of the pipeline that goes west. Is there anybody here from Peoria?
There was going to be a carpool showing up, but they haven't, I don't see them
They
here.
probably can't find it.
Yeah, if I could just add some
Sure,
things
please,
about,
go right ahead.
this is the Flanagan South
Come on
pipeline.
up there.
It's a 36-inch pipeline like Chi-Cap, which is the southern access pipeline. And there was an article about it on July 8th, 2013. It was published in EcoWatch. It was written by Midwest Energy News. And this pipeline, since it does not involve trans-border kinds of things, is being routed through the Army Corps of Engineers. And they're trying to get it rammed through with a process called Nationwide Permit 12, which would exclude public input into the process and make it primarily an administrative process. I think the Sierra Club is suing, it's tied up in federal courts now. But if in fact they get permission to build this through Nationwide Permit 12, it's gone. It's gone all the way. The only way to stop it will be widespread civil disobedience, because they will have the permitting processes done just like that. The U.S. Corps of Army Engineers is pro-industry, so they're no friend of the people who will be affected by this pipeline. Corey?
Can I ask a question about that, Bill? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know where I heard this, but it might have been through some of the Peoria folks, Zach Teague and others, who said that they don't need to get approval to put this pipeline through. They don't have to worry about eminent domain because they're already following a pipeline that they have in place.
Yeah, it's called Spearhead. It's a 19-inch. There are actually two pipelines in place already. You've got Spearhead, and this pipeline will parallel Spearhead almost perfectly. Now, so that will probably expedite the process. But there's also a Mustang, an 18-inch pipeline from around it's not Flanagan area, it's one of the shipping canals in Chicago, but basically runs, I think, pretty close to where the pipeline going through McLean County will go. It's an 18-inch pipeline owned by ExxonMobil. And I think Enbridge is a partner in that pipeline. So we're going to have two sets of parallel pipelines.
So my follow-up question though to that is, this Elvira Brooks who contacted us yesterday saying that her friend was coming back here to put this pipeline in or help put it in. I think it was said that she's coming next week. I mean, this worker's coming next week to start. So, and you mentioned there's a holdup. It doesn't seem like with, the stockpiling of pipelines and then this person coming back to Illinois saying that this is starting next week.
Okay, well, let me read this. Nationwide 12 is a popular option with pipeline developers. TransCanada, developer of Keystone XL, attempted to use that process. In response, the Sierra Club filed 2 lawsuits. Okay, maybe I'm confused. That must have been for the XL. I'm not sure what the status is on the nationwide 12 permit for Flanagan South. It's something we probably want to find out about. But if they can access that, it's going to be, a piece of cake for them to put that pipeline through.
So you're saying this is starting next week, probably, within, do you know where the work begins?
I don't know, except, I imagine in El Paso or just the northern section here that.
If that's where the pipes are, they're probably gonna wanna start right there, because moving those things around takes rail cars, and I watched them come in here, in 2008 when they were stockpiling them over on Wiley Drive, and it took days and days and days of freight cars of pipes coming in. They fenced off an area that had been an open field and put no trespassing signs all over it. Yep.
This graphic just shows it up to Flanagan, but all the other sections north and west are already built, is that true?
I'm not sure about that, Rachel. Let's go back to that other map that showed up there. Now, we know that was the Michigan pipeline that leaked. So we know that's built. My stepsister lives up here in Ransom, which is north of Pontiac by about half an hour, 20 minutes. And they have an Enbridge pipeline going through Ransom, and that brings the diluent from an eastern Illinois area called Manhattan over to dilute the bitumen. So that's a different kind of material flowing through that pipeline. The farmers there were quite pleased with the way the company removed the topsoil and then put it back nicely. And what I don't know is after several years, are their crops going to be as good or not? Because the material running through there can run hot and it could damage the roots. We just don't know how that's going to pan out. Excuse my voice, I'm sorry.
Your color code there says which parts are new.
Oh, excuse me.
Under current capacity, it tells you which of the color-coded numbered items are new. So for example, the one from McLean County, number 7, is a new pipeline, which is why they have to, they don't have an existing route that they already own. So there's several new pipelines that are on that map, the segments.
Uh-huh.
So wherever it says new, I think are the new
Flanagan.
ones.
The only seven, well,
Yeah.
Because Flanagan South is 11 and it says new
all right, here are
pipelines.
the dates. Mid-2014,
So for 7, it's 2015.
yeah. So some of them are 2013. I don't see any that are done.
So Southern Access is 2015, and Flanagan South is mid-2014.
That's pretty soon.
Well, I think what's a larger thing that's interesting is that combined, these two pipelines are much larger than XL. So I don't know why they don't have these pipelines in Illinois as a national target, since they're much closer to people who would be willing to protest that. So I think national attention on XL has been, in a sense, misdirected in some ways.
350.org has taken an interest in this. I have a 350.org email about the local situation, and I'm heartened to see them do. For publicity reasons, it was easier for them to focus on one big one. But as Bill pointed out one time, if that one gets closed down, the oil's just going to get sent here through our pipelines, they're gonna do what they're gonna do until we stop them.
Bill, I'm just gonna speculate, but I'm guessing it's because the entire state of Nebraska was saying we don't want the pipeline through. And when you have something as large as a state saying it's not, you know, we don't want it coming through our state, that got a lot of attention. Here, it's much smaller, you know.
But it's been a stealth campaign, which has allowed them to get away with a lot of things. And the national environmental groups have been sleeping the stick on what's happening in Illinois.
I think it's important to remember that in December 2006, Mayor Stockton, on behalf of the city of Bloomington, submitted an affidavit to the Illinois Commerce Commission approving this route through McLean County. They did not have to do that. While they don't have any authority to reject it, they did not have to support it. But because the company is still having problems getting this entire route purchased, and may have to go back for eminent domain. I was at the meeting at the McLean County Farm Bureau back in October, where Enbridge met with what was surprising to them, some hostile landowners. They thought that being at the Farm Bureau, they would have a supportive group. And we did get them to admit that they were going to go back and apply for eminent domain again with the ICC, should they not be able to get through their entire route. And some of these holdout landowners, if they keep holding out, it really is very expensive for them to try to route around it. So I think they would, if they do have to go back, then the city has a chance to resubmit another affidavit. And you should read the one they submitted. I mean, whoever lives in Bloomington, thankfully I don't, your mayor at the time capitulated completely, accepted false data, and I've highlighted the parts of the affidavit that I think is questionable, and basically supported Enbridge in this pipeline. They did not have to do that, and maybe Mayor Renner, should they be in the position to reissue an affidavit, could take a different tack if citizens of Bloomington so chose. In the same way, McLean County, while they can't statutorily stop it, they could also submit an affidavit as to whether they think it's a good idea or not. And I don't think they submitted it one way or the other at the time, but again, if this does come back to the ICC, and I suspect it will, if these landowners hold out and they have to go for eminent domain, that might be a real good time to be a pressure point and revisit these governmental entities so that they actually engage in a different way with the ICC.
To whom are these affidavits addressed?
To the ICC.
Okay.
Yeah. So what the ICC does is all of you as individuals can do it too if it comes up again. It's kind of a little complicated. You have to get docket numbers and all this stuff. It's a very tortuous website I've discovered. But if they do have to resubmit to the ICC for eminent domain, then that will open the door for everyone being able to submit comments again. It would be great, and I'd love to see us be positioned with Bloomington, Normal, as well as McLean County to get a different type of submission than the ones they either did or just ignored. So that might be a very interesting thing to keep in mind, because they can't meet that target date if they don't get this route.
Just a quick question. I wonder, is this a money generator? Just in these times, I just wonder who are our foes, or who are we battling against? Does it generate money for local government? Does just the landowner is paid, but in terms of
one-time payment, yeah.
Year and annual, it's just for buying, okay, and so this doesn't affect budgets. Those are things sometimes that when we go to people, if we have the information, I don't know that.
I asked the county board that when they allowed me to speak to them. What's in it for McLean County? And I expected that they would get some tax monies from the right-of-way or something like that. Well, they were talking about just little piddly things, like when the right-of-way is sold to the company, they'll have to go pay some kind of fee per property owner. Well, that's a one-time thing, and doesn't amount to anything. If they were getting tax money, I could see some interest in that, but there's really nothing for the people of McLean County. You want to say something?
I wanted to ask Angela a question about the eminent domain issue on the Flanagan South pipeline.
Not an issue because, as you point out, they own the entire right of way already.
Okay, so
So
if even if you're a landowner and say, well, a 19-inch pipeline is one thing, 36-inch pipeline
No,
is
those
another.
contracts are written fairly broadly, so once
Okay.
you give them the rights.
They can extend it,
yeah,
add to it.
It's all in their contracts, yes. My understanding is, I don't know the specific contracts, but what I've heard is
So
that
that
that's
has-
a typical
yeah,
language.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right, yeah, they want to reserve those rights, and so that's part of the negotiated deals in most cases at least. So it sounded to me like there's nothing easy to do with the Flanagan one, but we do have some real options here because of the holdout landowners. And I'm really impressed, the few landowners who are holding out, they just love their land. They do not want to see this tear through their woods or anything else. Because they could negotiate a pretty high price, and they so far are not, and perhaps they will hold on to that.
Do you know if there's anything we could do to support them in that decision? Even something like an award or some kind of recognition, public recognition for their stand that they're taking or something like that, just to let them know that there's people that, you know, that there's lots of people in the community that appreciate what they're doing?
I don't know. Tom Plura has been the key attorney in this, and it would be good to find out from him where things stand. He certainly
I did
would.
recently,
And
about
did
a
he-
month ago.
Oh, about a month ago?
Yeah.
What did he say?
He said he expected them to go back to
Yeah, I think
ICC and
everybody
try to
does.
get, but he didn't want to give up hope until
Right.
the very last minute.
Right, I mean, but he would be someone to talk to pursue that particular.
That's a great
possibility.
idea. I like that.
I mean, even if they end up losing in the end, at least it lets them know that the fight wasn't unnoticed.
Right.
Now, what would be the proper entity to award that?
How about Mayor Renner?
Well, let's get him on board for other reasons.
Isn't there an organic farm organization, that farmers are trying to go for organic agriculture and stuff like
Well,
that?
we've got the Land
That would
Connection,
be-
we've got Stewardship Alliance.
That would be a much more appropriate organization to give some kind of an award to farmers for defending their farm, I would think.
They may not be organic.
Well, even if they aren't organic, at least organic farmers care about the environment
Yeah,
to
yeah.
some degree.
There's also an Illinois Organic Association, and Dave Bishop is the head of that.
Yeah, that might be a good one to pursue. Yeah,
In the areas where there's been the spills, what happens?
it's a mess. How quickly the response teams get there vary from what I've heard. The Michigan spills that went into the Kalamazoo River were hours before it was even detected.
17 hours.
17 hours is a long time for something to be.
They had multiple emergency warnings go off in every kind. They said it was an air bubble. And it was basically a utility person on site from one of the local utilities who spotted the oil gushing down this tributary creek, who called the hotline. And what happened is they had 3 different shifts. And they had these emergency calls go off, depressurization of the line, and they said, oh, that's gotta be a false bubble. They didn't notify the next shift. So they had the emergency things go off again. They said, oh, it's gotta be a false bubble. So this happened across 3 shifts, 17 hours. A million, I can't remember, it was 1 million gallons of bitumen that sunk to the bottom. Because what happens with this dilbit is it's diluted with various kinds of hydrocarbons, including benzene. And within 9 days, that stuff volatilizes and goes off. And then the bitumen can be about the same weight as water or heavier, so it can sink. So this is the first time they've had a dilbit spill. No one, including the federal government, knew what to do about it because the water was sinking to the bottom. And they're still working on the cleanup, 13 months, a year and a half later. Because they've got pools of this stuff below a series of dams sitting on the bottom of the river.
In the river.
Still.
And they're demanding that Enbridge basically dredge this area to get rid of this stuff. And Enbridge is dragging its heels. They've spent close to $1 billion in cleanup.
Has it affected health in the region? I mean, with
Yes.
fracking, we know that it has.
It has affected health because the volatile organic compounds that were basically bubbling off caused a series of health effects. And they had to move people who had homes along the river away from their homes.
People had to leave their homes and.
Yeah.
And this damage is permanent, right? So does
It's
that make sense?
What they had to do, the tributary that went into the Kalamazoo, Enbridge had to rebuild it. Remove all the soil, reconstruct this tributary creek from scratch. Yeah, but the problem is the Kalamazoo has been damaged, and it'll be damaged for a very, very, very long period of time.
And there's no way to rebuild that ecosystem completely.
Yeah, that's my suspicion, it'll probably be a
Yeah.
long, long
Right,
time.
right.
Yeah, but and here's the other thing is, I'm not sure I'm clear on this, but I think the oil companies are exempt from the Superfund fund, and I'm not sure, but that may carry over to the pipeline companies as well. And so they have to be sued for the cleanup rather than having it automatically fall under the Superfund law.
How did Nebraska manage to protect it?
Good question. Does anybody
Well, they
know
didn't.
anything about
They did not have, this is where I'm saying it would be useful if the county and the city got involved, because Nebraska did not have an ability under statute to actually say no. But, again, much of this is a political decision, right? And so there was a lot of political wheeling and dealing going on. They had enough leverage there. Now, remember, Nebraska's governor finally did say we're okay with the moving of the pipeline, but the Nebraskan landowners were very much against it. So eventually the state abandoned their own citizens on this when they moved the route. But this is a big problem, is that you don't have any ability legally to regulate or say no, but you have a lot of potential political power if you exercise it. That's why I was so disappointed when Mayor Stockton basically capitulated and actually said that we're okay with the pipeline. That was really foolish, without even requiring that the Money Creek crossing be a high consequence area. So at the same time, we're worrying about agricultural nutrients getting into Lake Bloomington. Believe me, if the rupture occurs on Money Creek of the same type that occurred on the Kalamazoo River, you wouldn't have a water supply at all, Lake Bloomington. There'd be no way to clean that up. So we would not be worried about nutrient pollution at that point. It brings up an interesting point, though. This Money Creek issue is very troubling to me because, as you pointed out, that's the major water supply for the city of Bloomington and a few surrounding areas. They have only promised voluntarily to do the highest engineering standards, et cetera. The high consequence area includes engineering standards, leak detection standards, response standards, all sorts of important things. It's not a panacea, but it can certainly help, and it certainly increases the cost of the company, which could be helpful too. But in any event, no one should be happy with the fact that they are saying this is voluntary, because as Ann already found out, they've already forgot about it. There should be huge pressure placed on the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to make this a requirement. If you read the statute for high consequence areas in the federal statute, there's a lot of latitude given to the PHMSA, PHMSA, Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which happens to be a captured agency, as we learned a similar agency was with the BP oil spill. But nevertheless, again, political power is what's going to take. Why? What is the technical reason that they cannot designate as a high consequence area Money Creek crossing? We can't rely on the voluntary ability of Enbridge to say that they will follow through as if it was one. If they're going to follow through as if it was one voluntarily, then make it official. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I think that would be a pressure point that certainly the city of Bloomington ought to be mining through their political contacts as well as the citizens of Bloomington.
Another thing that we found difficult to find out was that a lot of this has been made secret since 9/11. Finding out about water sources and whatnot has been, you have to be a municipality in order to find out about your own water source and what its protections are. And an individual citizen can't apply for that information. You have to be an entity, a government entity, in order to get that information. Kevin, this should Chicago folks hear any of this, or
They
gave
could,
up
so
on
they dropped off, and I told them we'd send them as much of the materials as possible, because they do want to support us on the whole thing.
Well, great, that's
So-
wonderful, I'm sorry we
Yeah,
weren't able to
we
do
could have
that.
set up a better microphone situation for you, I think, and that would have helped them out a little bit. They could see, you know, but,
But then we went rampant,
right,
we ran rampant.
yeah. But they'd be satisfied with the materials and a conference call in the future.
Okay, that's,
The other really important stream issue that Ann clued me into is, while she did say that the Mackinac River crossing just upstream of the Merwin Nature Preserve, and those of you who've been to the Merwin Nature Preserve that Parkland's Foundation established many years ago, it's 1,750 feet upstream from the Merwin Nature Preserve that this thing will be crossing. I regret that we weren't able to buy one little piece of land, because we could have blocked them entirely, because we own both north and south of the river, but there was one little piece where you can see on the maps they jogged around. But anyway, who knew? But as Ann pointed out, while the Mackinac River crossing has been designated as an HCA, a high consequence area, Buck Creek has not. Buck Creek would be the entry point for any horrible spill. It's a very small tributary. It's just up on the Clarksville Road, if you know that. Buck Creek is a very short stretch, if you spill there, to get right into the Mackinac. And if you recall, the Kalamazoo River spill actually began in Talmadge Creek. That was the conduit to get to the Kalamazoo. So not designating Buck Creek as a high consequence area, in my mind, completely removes any satisfaction you might have that the Mackinac River crossing has been designated. It makes it immaterial, because Buck Creek would be the entry point for killing the river.
if I remember correctly, it crosses Buck Creek several times, does it not? Or runs right parallel to it.
Yeah, well, there's one main crossing where Buck Creek is actually not an intermittent stream, and it's just a little bit, I mean, it's really in that whole area, it's about a quarter mile and everything, yeah, and it's shown in the maps there, yeah.
Are you
So the Money Creek and Buck Creek, I think, are really important stream issues.
saying B-U-C-K?
The UCK, like the buck of a deer.
Yes, Craig.
I don't, okay, you got some little areas that can be classified as HCA, and then they get the highest engineering standards. Why aren't the highest engineering standards done from the beginning to the end of it?
Oh, you dream.
Too expensive. It's too expensive.
So they do kind of a half job on the rest of it, and pick out a few areas to actually do a good job.
But Greg's raising a good point here. If you take Flanagan South, for example, it's 665 miles long.
Let's do Flanagan South.
Pardon? Flanagan South. It crosses 200 streams, including the Illinois River and the Mississippi River. And so our little pipeline, 165-mile pipeline, probably crosses at least several hundred, maybe 500 streams on the way to Patoka. And if every community were to get in there and demand, protection of their local ecological resources, they wouldn't build a pipeline. It would be too expensive.
that would constitute victory.
What would the difference be between the regular pipeline and the high standard pipeline?
I imagine it'd be quite a bit. The federal statute talks about high consequence areas, and they have to meet certain high standards. They have to be highly ecological significant. Initially, they weren't going to designate the Mackinac that way, but thanks to Ann's help and others, we pushed and demonstrated the Mackinac River is known as a very high quality river in the Midwest. Upstream of a water supply, and exactly why the Money Creek wasn't eligible has never been explained to me, because it's obviously upstream of a water supply, and a few other little things. Well, that's what they claim, but it's actually closer. It's actually closer in distance than the stretch that was polluted of the Kalamazoo River, because I measured it.
They said this before.
Yes, this was before it, right. So there are some leverage points now after the Kalamazoo still, perhaps. And there are a few other minor things which seem applicable here, but I don't think we've maximized what they should have followed through on in terms of HCA status within our area. It also crosses the Little Kickapoo Creek. There's two Little Kickapoos. This is the one on the east side of Downs, not the one on the west side of Downs. So there are significant, at least several bodies of water that, I think you can make an argument should be eligible for HCA designation. And again, the city did not have to capitulate on that. Why they capitulated on their own water supply baffles me to this day. I actually did some calling back at the time, 2007 or so, and I was told there was pressure to bear at the upper level, I assume the mayor and or city attorney's office, on the staff who were concerned about it. So they were, basically the staff was told to be silent. And that's rather alarming. Thankfully, we have a new administration in Bloomington, so maybe this is the time to re-engage with them.
And I mean, to call something a high consequence area, it therefore implies that the other areas aren't high consequence. And I think that's something that we citizens should have some say in. I mean, we consider all of our land to be high consequent
We
when
do.
it comes to that. Yeah.
We do, yeah.
And I wonder if there's investments involved in why the, you know, we like Ann said, well, I can't figure out why they would have, why would Bloomington be interested in this when they could just, and I'm just wondering if there's been any investigation into investments.
Oh, that was my thought too, is it would be nice to know if some of the political leaders, because they met with the city council as well, Enbridge did, if some of the political leaders or other well-connected folks have a lot of stock in Enbridge. That would be a wonderful thing to know. I probably wouldn't be able to find out, but still.
Where are the jobs going? I mean, who's gonna build this? This is another one of our.
It's a local contractor.
I really don't know who's contracted to build it, but it's.
Do you know, Bill?
Yeah, but we like get flack from union.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah,
The point is that we need to, that's another one of the players.
That's such a temporary, small.
I know, but,
Well,
you know,
jobs.
you look at a bridge or an interstate, I mean, that's a job. And we should probably, you know, if these are jobs that are going to be outsourced, or
Thanks
if
for
they're going to
coming.
be, or if they're going to be local, you know, sources of employment.
I don't think it's like the fracking industry where they bring in people, specialists from way out, but I really don't know that.
But
It'd
it
be a
sounds
good
kind of-
question to ask Enbridge.
From outside the area. Well, maybe though, you know, John Penn or Tom Whalen would know what they're all,
That'd be a good,
That would be,
Yeah.
Mike Patoka, somebody like that,
Yeah,
might
exactly.
know if that would be
Yeah,
an
but-
issue.
UIPA people want to say anything?
Oh, I know that, I was just saying, Dawn, at the AFL-CIO headquarters down in Springfield, they have a big sign in their window and it says, Keystone XL now.
Oh.
Approved Keystone
Oh,
XL.
great.
You've answered that question.
I could respond to that a little bit. I've been in 3 different unions. I've been a delegate to the Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly. When you talk about the AFL and CIO, the heavyweight lifters are the AFL, which is the building trades. Usually the building trades, whenever the AFL-CIO has to decide something, the building trades has more political sway than the CIO unions, okay? Now, the building trades, and to some degree the Teamsters Union, they will be prone to make individual leadership decisions. They're not voted on by the membership of the union. I mean, that's a complete illusion that non-union members may have, that there's something democratic about this. Many times, union leaders will make arbitrary decisions on their own, and they will carry the whole weight to the union behind them, which means they decide who gets the money, political money from the union. It's just an individual leader that does that. They don't decide by a vote of the membership who the candidates are that are going to get the money. And a lot of times, they will say, okay, if you hire my friend, you hire my contractor friend even, then I'm going to be more inclined to support you politically in getting this thing through the legislature. So this is a wheeler-dealer type of thing. It's not democracy, it's not all the membership of the unions are endorsing these types of things. The machinists union actually came out for solar energy once upon a time. And of course that got nowhere with AFL-CIO. But there actually would be more jobs in renewable energy a lot of times than a lot of these really highly toxic energy things. So I think what we need to do is don't think of unions as, oh, now we've offended every member of the union because their leader says they're in favor of Enbridge pipeline. Most of the members don't even know what the hell Enbridge pipeline is. You know, so they don't know whether they'd be for it or against it. Apparently farmers when they know it's their land and their land's gonna be permanently poisoned, that a lot of them are willing to make that decision, I don't wanna sell my farm. Now, it's our responsibility, I think, is not to wait on any of this stuff. We already got a new mayor. We should go to that mayor and say, now look, this is what Stockton did. You can tell what Stockton did. And we want you to do the exact opposite and say, Bloomington is gonna go on record as opposing this. This is our water. You're talking about shutting off all the water for the city of Bloomington? I can't think of a more devastating act to destroy the city of Bloomington than shut off all our water, poison all the water. That should be something that every single city council member and the mayor should be willing to go on record, not in the closet, we're gonna talk to you in the closet, say we're against this stuff. On record, say, we as a city of Bloomington are opposed to this. The town of Normal should also be willing to say, we as mayor and town council are opposed to this. And then each individual county board member, get them to say on record whether they're for this or against it. And when you know who's for it and who's against it publicly, then it's worthwhile to go out to the general voters and say, okay, the next election, this is one of the things you need to look for. But as long as these people are making promises in the closet, and that you're saying the pipeline is making promises in the closet, that doesn't amount to anything. They've got to publicly say, I'm in favor of it or I'm against it. If they're in favor of it, you ask them why. If they're against it, you want them to go on record publicly. And it would be great to have a resolution from the city council saying publicly, we're against this.
Can I ask you what the Farm Bureau thinks about this issue? Are they just
knows better than I, 'cause he's
Well, I don't know if they have an official perspective on this. That would be very interesting. Traditionally, the Farm Bureau, mainly it was interceding. I went to the, even before that meeting, back in 2006, which was when I went to the Interstate Center out west side of Bloomington, and they had a meeting with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and they were mainly pushing that standards be made to properly restore the land for farming that it goes through. And apparently, the Farm Bureau was interceding only on that issue, making sure that the farmers were educated about what to negotiate for in terms of not losing their land or getting a fair compensation if they did. So I don't know that the Farm Bureau has an actual official stance on the pipeline itself, which would be interesting to find out if they do, but they might be in a little bit of an awkward place with
or
some
even
of the
extra
farmers.
official, but
Yeah.
where they're pushing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be okay with the standards that the Illinois Department of Agriculture has promulgated to deal with laying the pipeline. So my impression is that they weren't coming out for or against because they were okay with that. In the past, they sort of supported the farmer's right to do whatever they want to with the land. So in that sense, they say, yeah, if you want to, lease it to the pipeline, fine, that should be your right to do it. But since we do have a little bit of contention in the local farming community, that would be very interesting to know. I suspect it's between the people who are absentee landowners who probably are for it and the people who actually live on their land, which is a diminishing percentage, who are apparently opposing it. So, I don't know.
But again, that's the kind of thing that an award given to someone or something like that could raise consciousness.
Well, there was a few years ago, I know there was a little group had formed of those landowners, and again, I don't know who the contact person was now, but Tom Bureau would know, and so it wouldn't hurt for someone to have a conversation with Bureau on that particular issue.
I mean, it'd be great if we could have the award go through the Farm Bureau.
Yeah, well.
Then they give the award to somebody that had a bogus standard.
Angelo, do we know for sure what will be in the two pipelines, the Flanagan South and the...
Their literature does specifically mention that they have the option to use dilbit. So I think, is that the literature you brought tonight?
You want to tell us what dilbit is?
No,
for
no.
those of us?
Diluted bitumen. So it's the
No, I did not bring that.
oh yeah, the literature that they distributed at that meeting said that they reserved the right to carry what they want to carry pretty much, including diluted bitumen. So the tar sand stuff that they have to mix with these really horrible chemicals and things, and that makes it a lot harder to clean up when it leaks. That they perfectly have the right to bring that down, and with the desired expansion of Alberta tar sands, I'd be very surprised, particularly with the big dimensions of this proposed pipeline, that they wouldn't be going for that. So I think we can be fairly assured that it is likely that that's that's what will be there. Certainly, they aren't saying that it won't be.
We have a question back here.
It's called diluted bitumen, bitumen, or dilbit. Bitumen is sort of, when they get this, so you have to remove every living thing on the top of the area in Alberta, and then you dig up all the soil and other stuff, and then you bake it with natural gas, so you're already wasting a lot of natural gas, to get out this very viscous tar-like material. And then they have to mix it enough to get it to be less viscous so they can send it as dilbit through these pipelines, and then it's refined when it finally gets to the refinery. So that's why it's the highest greenhouse gas kind of emitting technique imaginable, as well as destroying everything over a vast area of the province of Alberta.
And so if I could add one thing, what happened in the Kalamazoo spill is that when this dilbit leaked, the diluting agent, which is a series of different hydrochemicals that lighten it up and make it possible to flow through a pipeline, volatilized off within 9 days, leaving just the bitumen, which is this heavy tar-like stuff. And as I mentioned, it's either the weight of water or less than the weight of water, so it can sink to the bottom, which makes it extremely difficult to clean up. All the oil spills we've had in the past, oil floats at the top, they use these booms, you can in a sense rake it up. Well, it's a different story when it's sinking to the bottom of the water column, which makes it really difficult on aquatic life, because the whole bottom of a river is covered with this highly toxic sludge.
And don't forget, that's the long-term damage. The short-term is there was all of that volatile chemicals was a real hazard to all the people living there, to the first responders, and they had no idea what they were facing because they had not been told. There's a wonderful ebook, and I wish I could remember the title of it now, but it's on that whole Talmadge Creek Kalamazoo spill, which chronicles all of the horrible things that went on, what the people suffered, what the first responders suffered, the different issues they had to deal with, and it's a great ebook to read because I thought they did a great job in pulling all those issues together on that one particular spill. So it would kind of tell you what would happen if we get a Buck Creek Mackinac River spill or Muddy Creek spill. That volatile stuff's really dangerous stuff, and they hadn't bothered to tell anybody about they were living near it.
Yeah. No one knew that was going through that pipeline.
In the city of Bloomington, it's the fire department that is required to deal with these toxic waste spills. That book you're talking about should be provided to Bloomington Fire Department and the Normal Fire Department, so that they would have some idea of the magnitude of what they might be facing.
If you're collecting people's email addresses, so you remember that or come across it again, could you email that to me? And I will make sure that you all get the title of that book, Ruth.
I think the best online coverage was at Inside Climate News. And so if you go to the webpage of Inside Climate News, which is really an excellent webpage, I think they had in-depth reporting on the Kalamazoo disaster. I think that was the one. I could be wrong. I think that was the one that covered it.
Ruth?
Well, it seems kind of like a naive question, I guess, but how, with all these processes that they must go through, is it economically feasible for those folks to work so hard to make this happen?
China, India, the big countries that are going to need, I mean, see, all this stuff's going down to be refined on the Gulf Coast, and it'll be exported. And believe me, there's a huge market out there. China's in desperate need of this kind of material for its export market.
And so they really are making good money on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If I could add a point here.
Oil and gas
That's too bad.
industry.
This stuff is going to the oil refineries on the Gulf Coast. In 2012, 60% of the gasoline refined at those companies was sent overseas. As these pipelines increase, the percentage going overseas will increase. So this has absolutely nothing to do with national energy independence, zero. This is for an export market. The other thing is if you look at, there's a very important concept called net energy yield, or energy input, energy output kind of thing. How many barrels in, how many barrels out. To sustain an industrial civilization, you need a net energy yield of at least 10 and above. 1 barrel in, 10 out. The tar sands run between 8 and 3, let's say 5. We cannot sustain American civilization on this fuel Millionaires can run down the highways in their SUVs. Everything else goes to the wall. This is why we increasingly find problems on infrastructure, public infrastructure, schools, you name it, privatization of prisons. Why the money is shrinking up is because we have less and less surplus generated off our energy to support other economic activity. And this is taking us right over the cliff. Mark my words. This is a civilization killer in more ways than one.
Thank you. I mean, thank you.
That's a bad thing?
If you're living in one, yes.
If Lake Bloomington is in the line of sight of this thing, I would think that it would be pretty easy to get hue and cry against it in Bloomington, because Lake Bloomington is the water supply.
Yeah, there's been so little coverage in the media, I agree. This is so off the radar of all of our local residents because there's been so little or unfocused media coverage that people don't even understand what's happening. There's been more coverage, I think, of the XL pipeline than of this, which I find amazing.
Well, that's where the publicity has been focused, just so that we can stop one. We need to diffuse it now that.
But you'd think the local media would be more on top of this.
Well, you know, that
They're
given
lazy.
given the fact that we are McLean County, I was impressed with the amount of coverage they gave the Michigan stuff. That pleased me
Right.
greatly. Now, the fact that it's a threat here has been underplayed completely, probably for political or financial reasons.
No, I think that.
Chamber of Commerce kind of likes this.
But I think the local media is either, I don't know, lazy is quite the word, is just, has not done any kind of reporting for whatever reason, that perhaps this is where a group like this could encourage them to do so through media events or whatnot that they can start covering, and then that would give reporters excuse to do background.
What media outlets do you think would be the most effective?
The Patagraph and WJBC would be the most effective at the local level. Those are the ones I'd go for. Yeah.
All right, how are we going to do this? I know this meeting was not called for this purpose to get us actually doing it, but how are we going to do this? Yeah.
Is, for the fracking, the teams went down to lobby. Is that a useful approach with this?
Well,
or at
it
this
didn't
point,
work that time, but we don't have a body to lobby right now. We've got diffuse, diverse
Well,
bodies to lobby.
And I think, one of the questions is, there was legislation. And now our tactic, I mean, the fracking isn't over. Like you said, we lost fracking. We lost it at the legislative level.
Right.
It's actually going to be much more like what this is, fighting things, at the local level and county level, and then the regulatory bodies. So, I don't hear you talking about there being anything at the state level for this,
I don't know what you
legislative
can do
level.
at the state level. Does anybody have an
Well,
idea?
what we
Yeah,
kind
what,
of
Rachel?
alluded to earlier, and I don't know if this is a practical idea, but we talked about how if a lot of little towns sort of brought forces together, it makes it a lot more difficult and less feasible economically for them. I don't know if a statewide organization like Food and Water Watch could be a vehicle for that, to get towns together that are interested in opposing this.
Was that Food and Water Watch that was on the call? Was that Emily Carroll, or do you know?
No, this is a Chicago group that's strictly kind of working on Chicago issues, but they're interested in this whole pipeline issue.
We heard of them through Zach Teague and some Peoria folk, and I think they're with the group Midwest Free, Tar Sands Free Midwest.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know about that group. That could be interesting.
I'd like to respond to this Pantograph and WJBC stuff. I haven't subscribed for a long time, and I just hate reading the paper. But the fact is, they have reduced down to, I think, like 40% of the staff that they used to have. And when you say that they're lazy, this one lazy reporter is doing 3 jobs of what it used to be a reporter did only the reporter job. So aside from any editorial prejudice that we want to support the rich guys and we hate all the poor people, the ordinary flunky reporters are overwhelmed with trying to do 3 jobs instead of 1, and probably for less pay than that one reporter job used to pay. So our job If we want to do something through the Pantograph or WJBCs, we've got to do their work for them.
That's true.
We've got to present them with all the work and the data that they need and why it's a believable source so that they don't have to go and work extra hours to try to find this stuff that we find so easily. We need to present them with the stuff so that on those cases where they're open, we provide them with all the information. They don't have to kill themselves trying to get that information. Okay?
I was just gonna say we do that, but they don't print it.
Yeah, no, but Ralph's right. I've gotten good traction. I've been real concerned on behalf of Audubon with the Sugar Creek Wellfield proposal that some of you may have seen. And we've gotten really good coverage on that from Rachel Wells, reporter. But we've done it because I carefully send her, actually she's willing to read them too, but I send her specific documents that I find, I PDF them, I send them to her, I point out the salient features. She reads them and she's very good, very intelligent to find these too. And I think if we had a website, a place that would host us, we could PDF all sorts of things with an annotated guide. That helps reporters a lot who do have scarce time. For example, I'm waiting to hear back. You may have seen the reporting on the PCB landfill thing. Well, where the reporter said that there are no PCBs in our water supply at this time. Does anybody know which water supply in Bloomington has PCBs in it? No, nobody seems to know this. The Mackinac River has long been listed as on the 303D list due to PCBs. So I've asked them, actually, what they did is they misquoted the press release from IPA. What IPA said is there's no underground water sources for Bloomington that are contaminating. Of course, there are no underground water sources for Bloomington at all at this time. This is all something we're trying to protect behind. But as you know, the Mackinac River pumping pool pulls water from the Mackinac, and the Mackinac has long time been on the 303D list with PCBs. So they're doing all these articles on what might be a future PCB contaminated water supply that might be a future water supply, and nothing on the current. So I've been kind of pushing them on that. They didn't have the time. I went and dug through all the IEPA documents and everything. I'm going to send it to that reporter.
What does IPA stand for there?
IEPA?
IEPA.
Oh, Illinois EPA,
Okay,
sorry,
I
I'm talking too fast. Yeah, that's
Look at
okay.
these people
Yeah,
thinking.
Illinois EPA, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's all over the web. So, but I think Ralph's basic point is you've got to provide them with the information and you've got to kind of digest it down. But I do find them to be actually quite receptive when you do that.
Each and every one of us can write letters to the editor. And they do publish your letters. So, Barb?
And I'm sorry I had to get here a little late. Did you guys talk about already the Enbridge accident rates? This is information that wasn't around way back when.
Accident rates, go ahead. Do you know them?
It's just that they've had a lot of spills and and of course it's kept pretty quiet, but it's a bad record.
When
Very
you
bad.
talk to the safety guy at the meeting, where you go from table to table or station to station, the safety guy talks about how few accidents the workers have and how their accident rate is very low. They don't talk about their spill rate, which is very high. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but their accident rate is low. Fewer of their workers lose fingers and thumbs and arms and legs. But their spill rate is higher than
That's
many
what I
other
was
companies.
really referring to,
Yeah.
and that's what's gonna affect the water supply. So
Yeah,
that's what
right.
we've gotta really get out to the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a bad company.
There isn't a good one.
Monitors
No, there
are
isn't.
inside their head.
I really like the
In front of
idea
computers.
of like
How
a
would they-
Wikipedia site, or I don't know, some sort
My
of
daughter
shared
works
site that
in
everyone
that.
can
I don't know if it's
access.
something
Because
Because then for
actually
myself, if I want to write
Finger
a letter to the
Yeah,
editor,
they're
I can go there and find some information.
Well, I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that can be easily scanned and put into a website. I don't know if that's something Ecology Action
No,
Center
I
would feel
think they would,
comfortable.
I'm not, I shouldn't be speaking for them right now, but I know that they're very sensitive about things like that.
Well, is there any website, is there any
Existing.
organization that would host
The
on their
Vision
website a
2021.
page for the, I mean,
Yeah,
they,
the Vision 2021 might be able to do that, do you
Would
think
they?
so?
because
We
we've
handle
got the
that?
stuff ready to go, we just don't have any place to put it.
Oh,
And if we had a place to put it where you have one link and then you can have a first page that annotates then you can go to the specific documents you're interested in, whether it's the affidavit of the city or whatever. I think that would be really helpful, because believe me, this is hard stuff to dredge up, as I've found over the years.
right, but you have it all in,
I have pretty much all of it in one form or another, and Ann's got some stuff too. We can put it all together, not too hard as a packet. that could be imported into,
Yeah, both Corey and I work on Vision 2020's website, and Corey Berman too.
yeah, because then you could reference that in your letters to the editor. People could go
Yeah.
right out and actually see things. I mean, this is
Plus,
really hard to
then
get.
that would give everything to our Chicago folks that weren't able to
Yep,
hear
yep,
too.
yep,
So
yep,
that's-
they'd have it all there, and it would help with the media
Thanks
coverage.
for coming, Kathy. You betcha. Thank you.